Wow, nothing to talk about today, huh? It is another episode of Donno Daily here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I am Alex Donno, and yeah, last night, I go to bed last night thinking, we're going to look back on, up and down, but ultimately disappointing 2021 Miami Dolphins season, missing the playoffs by a game. How is Brian Flores going to fix the coaching staff? How's Greer going to fix the offensive line? And then during the 9 a.m. hour this morning, Monday morning, Black Monday, we come to find out Brian Flores is out. The first tweet that I saw this morning saying Brian Flores had been fired, it was an Adam Schefter tweet. And I see everybody sharing it. I do follow Schefter, of course, but everybody left and right is retweeting it and comment tweeting it. And I had the reaction that probably a lot of people had when they saw the Schefter tweet about Flores getting canned. I needed to make sure it was the real Schefter, right? There have been fake Schefters on Twitter before. Is this the real deal? Are people falling for a troll? Where's the verified check mark? Sure enough, the check mark was there. Brian Flores is out. We're going to talk all about it, what the Miami Dolphins need to do next, and yeah, the factors that led up to Brian Flores getting canned this morning. Now, I got to tell you, and, for those of you who have been watching this show every day for months all throughout the Dolphins season, you've heard some of the stories that we've told and that we've heard from others about Brian Flores, the friction behind the scenes, and, he and Chris Greer not seeing eye to eye. I was surprised this morning. I was absolutely surprised to find out that Flores was getting fired, but I can't say I was shocked. I can't. I see so much shock and awe among Dolphin fans and people who cover the league and follow the league who are not Dolphin fans, who didn't see this coming in their wildest dreams. I can't say I was expecting this news to drop today, but I also, guys, I cannot say that I am completely shocked, okay? Now, there were clearly deficiencies with Brian Flores as a head coach. There was also clearly friction. And we're learning more and more about that throughout the day. A lot of the stuff that I've been hearing, rumblings behind the scenes, conspiracy theories, are actually getting confirmed by reputable people throughout the day today. Something you guys have to realize, and this, I think, is the number one factor why Brian Flores is out of a job despite 2 consecutive winning seasons with the Miami Dolphins. No playoffs, but 2 consecutive winning seasons. And when he was hired 3 years ago by the brain trust of ownership with Stephen Ross, general manager Chris Greer, they were hoping and praying, and I'm sure expecting, that Flo was going to be the guy to bring the Dolphins back to prominence. And now 3 years later, he's on the unemployment line. And I think he's going to bounce back. And yeah, Manny puts out the stat. Coach Flores fins record 24-25 overall. But the thing is, it's hard to go by the record when the first year, 2019, when he took over, they had an XFL roster. They had just taken the wrecking ball to that roster. The first year, 5 wins. Second year, 10 wins. Third year, 9 wins. So it's not as if win-loss wise, you can't look at the record, at least not the last 2 years, and say win-loss wise, Brian Flores, this is fireable. He's not winning enough. Like, when you think about where this team was 3 years ago, I don't think they've improved enough, right? I'm sure Stephen Ross expected to be, after last year coming that close, Ross expected to be in the playoffs this year. But guys, I think the number one reason why Brian Flores was fired is too much friction with important people. He and Chris Greer did not get along. That's been evident throughout the season. And as is being widely reported today, the owner, Stephen Ross, came to a realization this town wasn't big enough for the both of them. So he made up his mind one of these guys has to go, and has been the pattern for Stephen Ross in recent years, because Chris Greer, he's been with the organization 18 years. He has survived a lot of purges. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, Chris Greer is someone Stephen Ross has trusted throughout the years, continues to trust. He's happy with the job Chris Greer is doing. Don't talk to me about the 2020 draft, but the 2021 draft is looking pretty good when you look at the way Jalen Waddle has played this year, Jalen Phillips, and Javon Holland, who in the second round was the steal of the draft. And so Stephen Ross has decided, okay, I've got a general manager and a head coach who cannot coexist, because the GM, to Chris Greer's credit, Chris Greer is not a dictator, right? He's got final say over the roster, but when Chris Greer is deciding which players to draft, which players to sign, which players to trade for, he's doing it, at least trying to do it in concert with the head coach. He's trying to do it with the head coach's interests and styles in mind. And the two of these guys, unfortunately, have had irreconcilable differences, easy for me to say. And Stephen Ross decided this organization or this town is not big enough for the two of them. Now, I got to tell you, man, I think from my perspective, and I think a lot of you agree with this, one of the most surprising and disheartening factors about all of this is I have to wonder if the right thing to do here wouldn't be to clean house and get rid of both of them. Okay? Because Chris Grier is not innocent from his side of it when it comes to building a roster. Why is the offensive line perpetually this bad? Why has he chosen time and time again to neglect the running game and not draft a running back before the 7th round for the past several years? I mean, last year it was Jared Dokes in the 7th round. The year before that, they didn't draft a running back, period. Now, you could take part of that back to Flo because in Brian Flores not realizing until every other running back on the roster had COVID that it was time to give Duke Johnson a chance to play. Why did it take that freaking long? Even on the offensive line with Brian Flores, why did it take 18 weeks to realize you shouldn't be starting Jesse Davis? So that comes back to Flo. And yeah, when you have friction between the general manager and the head coach, you're not going to bring both of them back if you want to create harmony and collaboration with the organization, because you want there to be alignment. You always want there to be alignment between your head coach and your general manager. And another thing was, I've been told so many stories about this, a few on the record, a lot off the record throughout the season. No matter what either guy has told you at the podium this year, the relationship between Tua Tagovailoa and Brian Flores has not been good. Now, even from the outside looking in, that shouldn't be too difficult to figure out, right? Because during the whole saga leading up to the trade deadline, when a lot of people, myself included, were reporting how hot and heavy the Miami Dolphins were in courting Deshaun Watson, I thought Brian Flores handled that situation very poorly publicly, and he left his quarterback out to dry. And the two of them have had differences throughout the year. But to me, this is the biggest factor why, and I see a lot of Dolphin fans reacting to this Brian Flores firing and coming out, jumping off the top rope, defending this guy. Like, what is Stephen Ross doing? Flo is incredible. Why are you firing Flo? What are you doing? There were some things that Flo has done very well. These guys obviously played for him. They did have a 7-game losing streak this year, but they also had a 7-game winning streak. It was a remarkable turnaround. These guys played great, even with technically nothing to play for yesterday against New England. Yeah, they beat the New England Patriots 33-24. But I got to tell you, as a Miami Dolphins fan, and as someone who wants to see this team succeed, for someone who has seen this team either bad or mired in mediocrity for the majority of my life, I'm a 37-year-old man. For the last 20 years, the Dolphins have perpetually been mediocre or worse. I wasn't alive for either of their Super Bowl championships. I was born in 84, so I caught most of Dan Marino. I didn't catch any Super Bowls. 20 out of my 37 years on this planet have been mediocre or worse for these Miami Dolphins. But something you've got to remember about Brian Flores, a way that he failed here, okay? He succeeded in certain ways, but here's a big way Brian Flores failed. What has he done the last year hiring coordinators and assistant coaches? It's been a freaking mess. This guy worked so many years for Bill Belichick in New England. This guy has been a head coach for the past 3 seasons. Why is it he can't seem to find reputable, experienced people who want to coordinate for him, want to be assistants on his staff? Why did he just have in Lem Jean-Pierre, who's probably a very nice guy, first-time offensive line coach who clearly was not fit for the job and had no business coaching the Miami Dolphins offensive line? Why is it that Flo seemed to think that was the best available for that? Last offseason, Brian Flores had opportunities to interview good, qualified people to be an offensive coordinator for this Miami Dolphins team. What does he do? He promotes 2 guys from within, and at times you didn't know which of 3 or 4 people were calling plays. It was an absolute mess. So honestly, if you're talking about Brian Flores' qualifications, Flores being unable to hire a competent, experienced coaching staff to me, that's a serious red flag. A serious red flag. And I know he was a first-time head coach himself when he got this job. But 3 years in, you've got to figure out how to create some stability among your assistants. And he was not able to do that, okay? He was not able to do that. And again, from my point of view, I would prefer if Stephen Ross had cleaned house and if Chris Grier was also let go in addition to Brian Flores. But I can't be surprised that Mr. Ross didn't do that. That's been his trend. That's been the way he's run this organization since he took over 13 years ago. He's never fully cleaned house, okay? Even 3 years ago, when Stephen Ross agreed to clean house within the roster, right, to trade or cut all those veteran players, to put a wrecking ball to the roster, get rid of Ryan Tannehill, fire Adam Gase and bring in a new head coach, Brian Flores. Even then, Mr. Ross did not make a change with general manager. He's never completely blown it up and cleaned house. It's always been half measures and not full measures with Stephen Ross. We've seen it time and time again from the eras of Tony Sperano and Jeff Ireland and Joe Philbin with Jeff Ireland and Tannenbaum and Grier and Gase. He's never completely cleaned house. He's always made some changes while keeping other people in place for the transition. That's never been the way that he's done business. So what happened here, guys? Make no mistake about it. This move, firing Brian Flores, and announcing today, or it's being widely reported today, and I think Mr. Ross did talk about this in his newser, which was a very busy one. There was a lot of stuff discussed by Mr. Ross today. Chris Grier is being retained. So in this power struggle between Flo and Grier, and even between Flo and Tua, because there was that as well, Stephen Ross has chosen Chris Grier over Brian Flores. That is the decision that was made today. Now, on the Tua Tagovailoa front, Stephen Ross didn't 100% say today that Tua Tagovailoa is back and the undisputed starting quarterback for another year. He didn't entirely say that. I think he actually handled that question the right way, where Ross said, whoever the next head coach is going to be able to make that decision, which is right. Because if you bring in, especially if you bring in an offensive-minded head coach, they're going to want to have some input at least on who's quarterbacking their team, because head coaches are typically tied with the quarterback that plays for them. Those things go hand in hand. So I think that was right of Stephen Ross not to come out and say, Tua's definitely our quarterback, and whoever we hire to replace Brian Flores is going to have to live or die and ride or die with Tua Tagovailoa. No, you want the next head coach to have some input on this decision. But I will say, Brian Flores getting fired, I think that's a big victory for Tua, right? For those of you who say, hey, you've at least got to give Tua more time, get Tua Tagovailoa a better supporting cast so you have a better chance to evaluate him in year 3. This is a huge victory for the Tua stands. This is a huge victory for Tua. A couple of very important factors here to remember with Brian Flores. Not only do Brian Flores and Tua have friction, our friend Jason Sarney from Fin Maniacs reported that, and I've seen this among some folks. I certainly was not in witness of this, but there were reports after yesterday's game of a very heated exchange with Tua and Flo, where Tua actually dropped a rare F-bomb. That guy does not curse very often. Like, Tua Tagovailoa is the type of guy where if that guy, he doesn't curse like a sailor like I do. If Tua Tagovailoa is dropping an F-bomb, this guy's upset, and there's friction. And there have been reports, insider reports and outsider reports throughout the year of friction between Flores and Chris Grier. And this is all now coming to a head. Well, let me see this from, my eyes are so bad now because I'm getting old. I've got to expand this to full screen just so I can read it. Here's by Brian Goins. According to The Real Reason on his Finside the NFL show this morning, bro, I heard this story during the year. Tua was subjected to 4 drug tests between March and June 2021. It is believed Brian Flores was behind it, suspecting Tua took PEDs during the offseason to get in shape and transform his body. And guys, if you connect the dots on that one, have you seen the comments on Twitter by Tua's trainer Perform, which they are responsible for Tua's bodily transformation, because Tua Tagovailoa, as we saw it this past offseason, put on a ton of lean muscle. I mean, he looks like he's competing for Mr. Olympia. And as the story goes, Brian Flores, to try and fuck with Tua's head, subjected him to all these offseason drug tests, an abnormal amount of them, just to mess with him, when, as far as anyone is concerned, Tua's gains have been on the natch, that there's nothing below board about that. By the way, huge shout out to Devin Jordan for the super chat. He says, Donno, this franchise is a disaster. Why not clean house? Greer hired Flores, so he should be fired too. And guys, I agree with you, Devin. Believe me, I agree with you. Nobody should be surprised with the half measures, because that is all Stephen Ross has done for the last 13 years. He's never completely cleaned house in the front office. He hasn't. He's fired one guy, kept another, kept the GM, fired a coach. Then later you fire the GM and keep the coach. That's how it's going to be as long as Stephen Ross owns this team. Like, the only thing Stephen Ross has ever done that truly surprised me, at least in that moment, because later I kind of came to terms and came to grips with this. The only thing Stephen Ross has ever done that actually surprised me at that time was 3 years ago, when he started to use the word rebuild, and then people started to read into the lines that the Dolphins were tanking with the way he handled the roster, because Ross, who's always been an older gentleman since he's owned the Miami Dolphins, he bought the team in his early 70s or late 60s, is in his early 80s now, has never been a guy who's approached roster construction with a lot of patience. He had typically always been a guy that says, let's pluck a few high-priced free agents here and there. We're a player away from competing. So the only time Mr. Ross really surprised me, at least in that moment, was when he announced the rebuild on the day that he fired Adam Gase 3 years ago. Since then, the pattern of behavior has been very similar, half measures, not full measures. Nick Hernandez writes, Flo may have been fired for telling us we have a mediocre QB 3 years before the Dolphins finally figure it out. Okay, and let me get back to, because after we read the tweet from Reason, I didn't finish my point on why Flo being let go, I believe, is a huge victory for Tuanon. Because the other part of this, not only do Flo and Tua reportedly have a lot of friction, so this is good for the Tua camp that Flo is gone. This is also very bad for the Watson camp, okay? Because Brian Flores, I have been led to believe for the past couple of months, has been Deshaun Watson's strongest advocate within the Miami Dolphins. So that's on the Flo side. Flo has wanted Watson. And from the Watson side, Watson wanted to play for Flo, even before the sexual misconduct allegations came up. Because you remember there was about a 2-month gap there between the Dolphins getting linked to Watson, and then all of a sudden the accusers started coming out of the woodwork. So before the accusers even came out of the woodwork, everybody who was reporting on Deshaun Watson, when it became evident he wanted to get traded out of Houston, he wanted to specifically play for Brian Flores. That Brian Flores wasn't, I'm sure it's not the only thing, sunshine, women, if you know what I'm saying, but Brian Flores reportedly was a big factor for why Deshaun Watson wanted to come here and play in Miami. So yeah, you can say Flores being let go makes it at least a little bit less likely the Dolphins make a move for Deshaun Watson, and it makes it less likely the Dolphins move on from Tua Tagovailoa. So another question, and we're going to be bringing on, by the way, in a couple of minutes, our good pal Alfredo Arteaga from 3 yards per carry. Oh, Taco, thank you for the super chat. He says, love you long time. Well, listen, I appreciate the happy ending, sir. So another question we have to ask here is, with Brian Flores out, who's in? Who do the Dolphins replace him with? And first of all, my friends, this is so fucking important, okay? It's easy to fire a coach, right? And if I tell you deficiencies in Brian Flores, not the best game day coach. Oh, let me read this from Barry Jackson. More Jesse Davis on Flo. Quote, you've got to have thick skin with him. It's tough love. If you're doing your job, you're going to hear about it. If you're not, you're going to hear from him. Guys got better, and that is the bottom line. One of the things when it comes to Flo in the locker room, I think he was at the very least divisive. There are certain players who love him and want to run through walls for that guy. There are others who hate his guts. And part of that comes with the territory. If you're an old school Belichick disciple, disciplinarian type of coach, there's always going to be some guys in the locker room who don't love you, right? I mean, Brian Flores, he's a younger head coach, but he's not full-on player coach, right? There are certain guys who do not like his dictatorial approach, okay? There are others who love him. And I'll tell you, man, I talk to a lot of people with inside sauces who talk to certain players, other people who talk to other players. It seems very split to me. I talk to some people who their player sources tell them, oh, they're basically partying behind the scenes. They couldn't stand this guy. They're so glad he's gone. And then other people tell me there's a big faction of that locker room who are pissed, who feel blindsided by this, and they are pissed. And yeah, I think Aaron might be right there. I bet most of the offensive players hate Flo. You can understand that. I mean, the defense has thrived under Flo in a way the offense hasn't. Flo is a defensive-minded guy, so he probably pays more personal attention to the defensive players. So I could totally see that. Like, if there's a big-time split on the pro Flo and the anti-Flo, I could totally see that split favoring the offensive guys. But as to who the next head coach might be, my friends, very easy to fire a coach. To replace them with someone better, that's the more difficult part of this, okay? Now, look at a trend of the head coaches that Stephen Ross, or at least the people working for Stephen Ross, have hired over the years, right? When you think about Sparano, and I know that was more of a Bill Parcells thing, but that was under the Ross regime. From Sparano to Joe Philbin to Adam Gase to Brian Flores, they're given shots to coordinators, or in the case of Tony Sparano, may he rest in peace, had not even been a coordinator. He was an offensive line coach who got an opportunity to be head coach. The other guys were coordinators, right? Defensive coordinators, offensive line coach, all these first-time head coaches. If you want to remix it and do it a little bit differently this time, and I believe they do want to do it differently this time, bring in someone with actual head coaching experience, okay? Someone who's done it at a high level in the NFL before. And I think that this experiment with Brian Flores, whether you think he was great or bad, something that's been proven here is Brian Flores, maybe it's because of his inexperience or maybe it's a personality quirk in him, has been unable or unwilling to surround himself with great experienced assistant coaches. I see somebody throw the name Doug Peterson into the mix. I think he would fit that bill. There's been a lot of signs, and it gets it for the Eagles fan. Manny, the Eagles fan, gives it the thumbs up. There's been a lot of noise for Jim Caldwell, although I do want to point out that sources have told people within the 5 Reasons Sports Network that Caldwell may not be a target after all. I know my guy Big O is big on Jack Del Rio. Now, for me, he fits the experience bill. I think here I'd prefer someone not only head coaching experience, but someone with an offensive mind. If you really want to turn the page on Flo, the league is a lot more offensive than it ever was. We've seen that evolution, right? I remember 15, 20 years ago, the majority of people who would get opportunities to become head coaches after being coordinators used to always be defensive guys. And then the rules started to change. The game started to become more prolific. It became more of a quarterback and high-scoring centric league. The tide shifted to offense, getting opportunities. So, yeah, Doug Peterson and Jim Caldwell, I think either of those could be very good hires here because not only do they have a nose for the offensive side of the football, which is something this team needs because you have to improve that offense, but they're experienced enough and they have enough connections. They would be able to hire or retain good coaches on the defensive side to focus on that part of the football as well. And I see people throwing in a lot of coordinator names. I like Eric Bieniemy a lot. He obviously doesn't check off the box of head coaching experience. So I feel like Stephen Ross wants to do this leaning more towards head coaching experience when he's only hired coordinators before. Let me see what else people are saying in the comments. A lot of people saying Doug Peterson, by the way. Somebody said Brian Billick. No, that dude's too much of a fossil. I'm not. No way. That would have been a great hire like 25 years ago. No, I'm not going for Brian Billick. Let me bring on our first guest on this episode. Ooh, good night from Morocco. Morocco, one of my favorite pavilions in Epcot. I want to go to the real thing someday. I hope that someday I can go to Morocco and maybe I can stay with you for a couple of days. I'd love to check it out. Let's bring on a man from Lane Kiffin. Yeah, I don't know. I saw him Lane Kiffin is being linked to the Minnesota Vikings job. I did see that report come across today. Let's bring on Alfredo Arteaga from 3 yards per carry. Now, Alf, this is one of the busiest days in the last couple of years for people who cover the Miami Dolphins. You guys on 3 yards per carry, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually had an emergency episode today because you usually do the day after game pod like in the evening. You did it in the morning today. So how was that? I haven't had a chance to listen yet.
Yeah, usually we recap the game, and we were planning on doing a pretty elaborate recap of this game and of the season, and then lead into what they needed to do. But evidently, other news came about, and we tossed the game. Like, now we don't talk about the game no more, because what are you going to say? Brian Flores beats Belichick 4 out of the last 5 times.
It gets fired,
and you get fired, right? Tua goes 3-0 versus Bill Belichick. Like all of those talking points that I had ready for this show, you got to toss them. And now it's about he's they fired the coach. So now we're back to doing what we do best, which is this is the Dolphins season. Like, you thought that those 17 games that they played mattered. No, this is what the Dolphins do. It's the offseason. It's free agency, the draft. And now, evidently, we hire new coaches every 3 years. It's like the Olympics, right? These are our Olympics. Like, it's 2022, which means that 2025 we're gonna do this again. So it's fun, right? Like, this is what we do. This is what doing a Dolphin podcast has become. And I said this on the show that just dropped today. But it's true. Our podcast hasn't been around for a very long time. We have been around, And if you hear some people say it, I've been around since, Don Shula was hired, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I said it today on the show. Our podcast is old enough now to have lived through 3 coaches.
Wow. So you started with Philbin?
Yeah, and then right into Gase, and then here we are.
Now, I know I'm kind of going backwards to forwards here, but I want to start with what we just left off on. We're getting a lot of comments about. Before we get into why Flo was let go, let's get into who you think might be next. Now, do you agree with me that signs right now are pointing to, and the Dolphins don't always make decisions based on logic. I think we've come to learn that, but signs seem to be pointing to, do you expect Stephen Ross to go more of an experienced route? Because all the coaches that have been hired during his regime have been coordinators or offensive line coaches getting their first shot as a head coach. Do you think he's going to focus more on head coaching experience, or could another coordinator get a look here?
One thing you can always count on is that they're going to try something completely different, right? So, like if they already went, the newbie offensive coach, they went with the newbie defensive coach. So what's really left, right? Have they gone after the star? Well, you can argue that they went after the star, rock star head coach in Jim Harbaugh a few years back, right?
Right.
So he's covered almost every single base. The one that he hasn't covered, and that's a good one right there, is the guy with experience, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the next coach is going to be an experienced head coach. And I already saw the picture right there. I don't know how, can you find a candidate that's more perfect as far as fit than Doug Peterson? He checks every single box.
He's even got Dolphins ties, which I didn't mention that earlier. He played here.
He was the quarterback for Shula's 325th victory. Okay? People don't remember that. He was the quarterback against the Philadelphia Eagles, oddly enough, in Philadelphia to win Shula's 325th game. Okay? To break the George Halas's record. So, he won a Super Bowl. He's very RPO based. Rumor has it that the Dolphins have a quarterback that's pretty good at running the RPO. So you get to and you actually have somebody that has a little bit of weight now to a quarterback question, right?
Yeah.
If he comes in and he tells you, look, Tua's just not it. Okay. It has much more weight than Brian Flores, who seemed to have a vendetta against Tua Tagovailoa for the last 2 years. Okay. Especially after drafting him. Okay. And I've heard some people say, oh, he didn't want Tua, he wanted Herbert. I am certain that Chris Grier did not force Tua upon Brian Flores. I am certain about that.
I agree with you.
I'm certain he signed off on Tua. Okay, so if we're going to deem that a mistake, and in the grand scheme of things, it is a mistake because Herbert's all world, then obviously we know who to blame. All of them, because they all had the same ideas. They all wanted Joe Burrow. As soon as they couldn't get Joe Burrow, they took Tua Tagovailoa number 5th overall.
Now, when I first saw the news this morning about Flo, my initial thought, and I know I'm not the only one, was, oh, this must mean they're going lock, stock, and barrel for Jim Harbaugh. That was my first thought. Now, Stephen Ross spoke today, and he said, and remember, Ross is a Michigan alum and a big-time Michigan donor.
That's
and
his second team. He owns 2 teams.
That's right. And so Stephen Ross said, I'm not going to be the guy to take Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. Do you take that as face value? Because hold on, let me put on the tinfoil hat. Hold on. Because I could also say that, hey, he doesn't, the wording there is very specific. I'm not going to be the guy to take Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. But Alfredo, didn't we get a report last week after the national semifinal game that they lost that Jim Harbaugh is strongly considering going back to the NFL? So Stephen Ross could also say, hey, this guy's coming to the NFL anyway. Might as well be my team.
Yeah, right. Like if that's the case, then you could draw those lines, right, between A and B. But if I personally, I think that Stephen Ross right now is thinking 2 things. Okay, one thing that he's thinking is like, I need a new head coach for my hobby, which is the Miami Dolphins. And number 2, my second mission is to try to keep Jim Harbaugh in Michigan.
That's true.
Okay, I don't see how he's going to weaken one of his football teams to strengthen another. You know what I mean? Unless, look, there was a strong possibility that Jim Harbaugh was going to be a terrible fit. How many times did he lose to Ohio State?
Okay. Yeah, like the first 15 times. Okay. 9 times.
And if you know anything about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, the first thing that they tell you as soon as you get either job is, are you going to beat Michigan or are you going to beat Ohio State? And if you don't, you understand you're getting fired here, right? No matter how many other games you win. So, yeah, that could have gone south too, which kind of tells you, like, Stephen Ross is kind of bad at this, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, somebody else should hire the coach, or they should do, like, did you ever see the movie Let It Ride?
No, I've heard David Sampson talk about that movie before. You would think, because I'm a big gambler, you'd think I would have that in my rotation. I've never seen it.
There's a great scene where Richard Dreyfuss is running around Hialeah Racetrack, which is actually, it's still there. It's a casino now.
Oh, yeah.
But he's running around and he's asking people, all right, who do you like in this race? And people are saying the 5, and he crosses them out. And he goes, all right, and he keeps asking the next person, who do you like? Oh, I like the 6. And he crosses them out. He keeps asking everybody on the grounds of Hialeah Racetrack, who do they like in that one race, until he gets down to one horse that nobody picked, and he goes, all right, I'm betting on this horse. And I think that's what they should do with this coaching search. Lock Stephen Ross inside a room with all these candidates, and whoever he comes out and says, oh, you know what, I kind of like this guy, you cross his name out, and you move on to the next one. Until you find the guy that he absolutely despises, and then you give that guy a 10-year contract.
Wow. Okay, so let's backtrack on Flo getting fired, okay? Now, when I saw the news this morning, and I said this to start the show, I was surprised, but I wasn't shocked, okay? Because, a lot of Dolphin fans reacting to this on Twitter are acting like we just fired Vince Lombardi in his prime. Honestly, yeah. I wasn't shocked by it. When you look at, there was clearly friction, and more people are learning about that now between Flo and Grier. There was clearly friction between Flo and Tua. And I also point out the inability or unwillingness to actually surround himself with good assistant coaches. So I can't say I was shocked by this. Were you expecting that this could happen today?
We were expecting that something like this could happen, because on our OnlyFans chat group, okay, and you could see how you could join that by looking at our 3 Yards Per Carry Twitter account. But on there, we've been speculating all season long. Like, it wouldn't be crazy if they fire him. Now, it would be crazy if they had run the table and made the playoffs, and then they fired him for doing something historic. Yeah. That would have been crazy. Okay. But if they fell short again, we were speculating all year, he could get fired. Like, this is not a crazy thing out of left field that can happen. What we know about Brian Flores is what we've learned over the last 2 years. He's really competent. He's a great defensive coach. Like, he knows what he's doing. He knows the personnel side of that business. So if there were such a thing, and I advocated for this on the podcast and on other appearances, they had to segment the team, which meant that Stephen Ross was going to have to sit down with Brian Flores and tell him, look, I don't know if this is going to be a bruise on your ego, but we got to segment the team. You're still head coach. You still have the whistle. You still have the title. You get to call the timeouts. You run the team. You run the practices. But we're going to have to hire a strong personality to run the offensive side of the football team. And some people were saying, oh, this is kind of crazy. I'm like, no, it's not crazy. A lot of teams run that way. Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints run their team that way. Dennis Allen, who oddly enough was a runner-up to Brian Flores the last time out, okay, runs the defensive side of the ball there. Bruce Arians, who just won a Super Bowl, runs his team the same exact way, okay? Todd Bowles runs the defensive side of the ball there. So, that was one option. Evidently, maybe something like that transpired. I am told, and I do know, that he was asked to make some changes on the offensive side of the ball as far as staff. And quickly after that meeting is when it basically came out, guess what? You're fired.
Wow.
So who knows if he refused to make any changes, or if there's some rumors that he wanted to fire Charlie Frye. I don't know if that's true or not. Wow. But could you have seen something like, hey, he went to Greer and he said, look, I'm firing Charlie Frye, and Greer said, no, you're not. And then right there, you have the reason why somebody can get fired. It could be insubordination. It could be a guy that just doesn't get along. Brian Flores, for all his for what he is, which is an extremely competent defensive coach, it seemed like that the head job just didn't suit him. He just could not, he could not. Maybe down the road he gains a little bit more experience. He learns how to, delegate a little bit more. Maybe it could work out in the future, but it just turned out that he's a guy that could not work with others. And the more he worked with others, the more that they butted heads. And, you could have seen this coming. It was going to come. The only thing that could have changed it was winning. And let's face it, we're kind of happy with 2 back-to-back winning seasons, but did they really win? They're not playing next week.
Well, and the only reason,
and
they had a winning season this year because there was an extra game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're 9-8.
Yeah. If not, we would have been staring at 8-8, which is the absolute. It's purgatory in the NFL. Okay, like when you finish an NFL season and you're 8-8, you just stare at it and you're like, man, how do I dig out of the abyss?
Yeah,
this is no man's land. Because when you're 2-14, you could always look at it and say, okay, I know how we're getting better. We're picking higher, right? And we're going to have cap space because we're going to empty out the roster. Like, that's how we get better. When you're at 8-8, you basically built something. You're staring at it, and you're like, damn, it's still not good enough.
Yeah, and there's no way to make it better. Let's answer this one to the best of our ability, because I've got a pretty strong opinion on this. How does this affect Deshaun Watson? And obviously that's disregarding all the legal trouble. But just at face value here, Alf, I think this is a big victory for Tuanon, right? Mm-hmm. Because Brian Flores, I think, was Deshaun Watson's biggest advocate within the Dolphins organization. Deshaun Watson reportedly really wanted to play for Brian Flores. So if I do the math here, this makes it at least a little bit less likely the Dolphins make a move for Deshaun Watson.
Well, yeah, I know for a fact it's a great day for Tuanon. Like, that Twitter account got Brian Flores fired, evidently. So, if you want to put on the tinfoil hat, now it's time to put it on. Like, they've been calling it all year, right? Like, Tuanon's been saying, look, we're coming for you, Brian Flores. And guess what? They got him. They actually did get him. I think this Watson thing, everything I've heard is that he's wanted to play for Flores and Greer. Like, yeah, he liked the idea. Another guy he's mentioned, and he actually wanted the Houston Texans to interview him, was Eric Bieniemy. Okay, so I guess you could look at it 2 ways. If Eric Bieniemy gets hired here as the head coach, then Watson's right back in play, right?
Yep.
If he doesn't, I would say, I wouldn't call Tua safe, but he's safer.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
He's safer,
Right.
Exactly. Because you never know if a new coach comes in and the new coach comes in with his own ideas, and who knows what those ideas could be. So Yeah, I would say he's safer, but I wouldn't say safe. But the Watson thing appears dead for now.
I got two more things I want to ask you. Do you think Brian Flores immediately lands on his feet this coaching cycle? Because I think he could end up with another job. I even wonder, not that this would be too attractive for him. Can you imagine if the Houston Texans make a run at Flores? Because if they want to patch things up with Deshaun Watson, that might be the best guy to do it.
Yeah, if I'm if I'm Nick Caserio, okay, and I always felt this. I felt this from day one. Okay, I felt that Nick Caserio was thinking, I really don't want to trade this guy. Like, he's an elite quarterback. I got to figure out how to do this, right? I got to figure out how to balance that my quarterback is probably a felon or allegedly a felon, but how are we gonna work this? Well, this is one way right now, and they have a connection. Nick Caserio, New England Patriot connection. Brian Flores, New England Patriot coaching tree. Their connection is strong. So I would bet that has to be a consideration. Like, if I'm Nick Caserio, that's my first phone call. My first phone call is actually to Deshaun Watson. And I tell him, hey, buddy, how do you feel about Brian Flores as your head coach? And if he says, I'm all for it, then it basically writes itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's easy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one spot where he does land as a head coach. Other places, some people are speculating, oh, maybe he can land in Denver. I don't know. I think usually it takes a cooling off period, and that cooling off period starts with a DC job for a year. Okay.
Right.
So if I had to bet, it's maybe Houston, or he takes a high profile DC job, maybe with the Cowboys. It looks like Dan Quinn might be leaving there. So maybe he becomes the Cowboys defensive coordinator for 1 year, and then he's back at it the following year, wherever they hire somebody else, wherever they fire somebody else. But for now, Houston, yeah, good. Now I'm good type.
Yeah. Now, as a Dolphin fan, I'm not going to lose a whole lot of sleep over Flo getting fired, but this is something that gives me pause. Stephen Ross, in the 13 years he's owned the Miami Dolphins, he's never completely cleaned house. It's always been half measures at the top. He's either retained a coach and fired a GM, or fired a GM, retained a coach. So this time around, he fires the head coach, he retains the GM, and Chris Grier is a survivor. He has been here for a very, very long time, rising up the ranks. He has survived a lot of purges over the years. Do you think Ross should have cleaned house, or are you okay with Grier retaining power?
I don't understand how Chris Grier keeps hanging on, but he's either very lucky or very good at playing the politics of pro sports, right?
Yeah.
I will say this. I don't think it's luck that he had 3 top draft picks in a row to start the 2021 draft.
Yep.
But I think it is luck that when all hell broke loose, that he gets to point to those first 3 draft picks and say, how the hell are you going to fire me?
But I would also say, how about the year prior, Chris?
No,
what did you do there?
That was Flores. You understand?
Yeah, I do.
You understand? I had nothing to do with that. I had a lot to do with this. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And by the way, in 2020, I'm the one who wanted Raekwon Davis, right? Like, I nailed that one, okay? And I nailed Emmanuel Ogbah. I did all the good things. All the bad things are somebody else. I had nothing to do with that. And evidently, it's working, right?
Yeah.
But I've heard this said today or earlier on a few radio shows. I think Chris Grier's put a bullseye on his back, right?
Yep.
Like, he has basically a year. Like, he has a year. He has this offseason and this draft. If that Dolphin team doesn't improve and basically make the playoffs next year, he has to be getting fired. Like, there's no way to justify him staying on one more season past this year.
And then it could be another mess, depending on how the team does. You're going to have a holdover head coach. And again, I don't know who they're going to hire.
They just fire Grier. And we're back.
You're going to fire Grier, and they're probably not going to fire the next coach after 1 year unless they're catastrophically bad. So
I have a solution.
I
have a solution. Please. I have a solution. Hire Chris Grier as the head coach.
So he's going to pull. Like, the Marlins have done that with Dan Jennings. The Panthers did that years ago with the Chiefs.
Now, how does he escape that one? Like Like, first of all, would he turn it down? Would he see like the writing on the wall? Like, oh no, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to fire me in a year, aren't you, Mr. Ross? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's the only way. That's the only way that you could actually see it. You know what I mean? Through for sure.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You know, but he does have. Like, there's no way, right? Like he's put all of this pressure. He's put a bullseye right on his back. Look, I guess I'm part of the media, right? Like, you know, I have a podcast that a lot of people listen to.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going on my podcast and saying, look, I expect this team. Look, you have a bunch of young players, good players on the defensive side of the ball on rookie deals. Like you have a decent young roster that you can add to and put over the top into playoff contention. I expect them to be in the playoffs next year. If not, fire everybody. And I mean, right down to the janitors. I'm talking about anybody.
Wow. Tremendous job as always. By the way, 3 yards per carry. They had an emergency episode. It is out there. You can watch it on YouTube or listen to it, download it on everywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, everywhere you get your pods. Find 3 yards per carry. Alfredo, thank you so much, man, for the time. And this should give us something to talk about for the next several weeks at the very least.
Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be, and when I say fun, it's tragic, really. But, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the guy right there.
I like it. I'd take Peterson. Like you said it perfectly. He checks off every box. The experience, the success. He even played quarterback with the Dolphins, so he knows the organization. So, and you know what? He makes so much sense. There's probably a 0 chance he gets the gig.
Which is unfortunate.
Alf, be good, man. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you, Donno.
That was tremendous. One of the all-time greats, Alfredo Arteaga. Guys, I'm so happy to have so many people in here in the live chat. We're going to be talking in a few minutes with the boss man himself, Ethan Skolnick. Please, the reason why we're able to do this show every day and have a lot of fun, we exist because our sponsors are so awesome. Please support the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. Whoever the head coach is next year, whoever the quarterback is next year, watch every Dolphin game at the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. Hot tip, head out there tonight. Every Quarterdeck location is going to have the Natty, the national championship game tonight. Watch it on their flat screen, high definition TVs covering every single wall. The Quarterdeck, guys, has 2-for-1 happy hour all day, every day. The 2-for-1 cocktails are always flowing, and they are so good. The beer is always ice cold. When I talk about the food there, God, I make myself so hungry. The seafood is so fresh. I love the fresh mahi-mahi. I love to build my own poke bowl. The sushi is to die for. The buffalo shrimp is the best appetizer on the planet. The burgers and sandwiches are awesome. By the way, the Quarterdeck, not only can you watch every football game, every basketball game, every hockey game, all the Panthers games out there, every UFC pay-per-view fight, because they have them all for 0 cover charge. You know, they raised the prices of UFC pay-per-views to $75. You know what the price is? The cover charge at the Quarterdeck? 0.0. Watch every pay-per-view fight out there. The Quarterdeck, come for the food, stay for the fun. And guys, you're looking to place a few wagers tonight. You could probably get futures on who the next head coach is going to be with the Dolphins. But if you're looking to bet the national championship game tonight, use our official sports book, BetUS.com. BetUS is America's favorite sports book. Yes, it's available in Florida. People ask me that all the time. It is available in Florida. They've got live betting on everything. You'll find odds on every game. You'll even find pop culture props, bet the horses. They have a full-service casino right there on the site. It's like having Las Vegas in your pocket on your smartphone. You can play blackjack, table games for real money, slot games at BetUS, and we've got the best bonus in the industry because when you sign up with our code 5RSN125, that's 5RSN125. They're going to give you a 125% sign-up bonus. So sign up today with our code 5RSN125. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Ooh, and we also have an official fantasy sports partner here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I love this app. I love this service. They are now the exclusive fantasy partner of 5 Reasons, and that is Prize Picks. If you're tired of losing in fantasy sports, I got my ass kicked in every season-long league that I was in this year, guys. It was not fun. Times are changing. At Prize Picks, it is just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you, whether the injury bug ruined your season-long team. I mean, COVID could have done that as well this year. Or if you're a vet in the daily fantasy space, Prize Picks is fantasy with a twist because you go by over-unders, which I love, and parlays, which I love. You simply select 2, 3, or 4 players and predict if they're going to go over or under their fantasy projection. You can win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. And I think the best thing about Prize Picks is you can cross sports. You don't have to do, 4 selections all of basketball players or NFL players. You can actually cross sports. You can have the over on an NHL player, over on an NBA player, over on an NFL player, on a player in the Natty tonight. You can cross sports. It really is a fun app. So sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks mobile app. And yeah, you see it there. Use our code 5 and spell it out, FIVE, and get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy simplified. Let's bring in the man who makes this network possible. CEO, the boss man. Oh, Manny and I both clicked on it at the same time. Ethan J. Skolnick.
I can see we're a well-oiled machine. That's good to see. I haven't fired anybody today. I can't because I don't actually pay anybody's salary. but if I did, I wouldn't fire you first. I've got a list, but you're not first on it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear. So I'm not Flo. I'm more in the Greer. I'm in the Greer territory.
No, I'm trying to think who's our Greer. Who is the person who's been around forever, but we're not really sure what he does. He's kind of got the stapler. Don't start with the Duncan stuff. Who is our Chris Greer? You know what? I'm going to figure that out. It's got to be somebody on the Heat side, right? Like,
I got to tell you that they're like, I'm in all the Twitter chat groups that we have, and there are some people to this day I don't know who they are that show up.
That's true with me too, and I brought them all in. All right, I don't know. Well, actually, I didn't bring them all in. I let Adam Barai bring a few in. Like I let Barai go on like a hiring spree for clutch corners. So there's some people on there I have no idea. We don't do background checks or anything, so
of course
it can be. I mean, if you got a take, we'll bring you in. That's fine. Particularly if you got takes. We just brought in Nick Alvarez. His Twitter handle is Nick's Takes. Like, okay, you're hired. That's
you're
it.
in.
Yeah. I don't know what you're taking about, but yeah.
First thing I got to ask you, I asked Alfredo the same thing. I gave my reaction. Did this move shock you?
Yes.
Like I said, the thing is, Ethan, the Flores thing, it surprised me, but it didn't shock me when you think about all the factors here. So what was your reaction when you saw it?
I got to cancel a dentist appointment. That was my first reaction. After that, I mean, nothing shocks me with this organization because the cycle is the cycle. I'm just trying to fix my camera here. The cycle is the cycle. It's a 3-year cycle with the Dolphins. There's this great meme that's going out on Twitter, and I posted it up. I wish I could take credit for it, but it is exactly the same every time. Excited about the new guy, going to do a rebuild. Everybody's on the same page. We beat New England. We missed the playoffs, so it's completely meaningless. 3 years later, we fire the coach. And then we start over again. And it's always we fire one or the other, to the GM or the coach. It's never all together. So it's always this half-assed BS, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing again. It's always at the end. I've said the Dolphins do not play playoff games. They play blame games. This is how every single regime ends. The general manager and the coach are at odds. The owner takes a side. This has happened it's not just Ross. It was Huizinga too. This has happened over and over. It happened with Ireland and Sperano. It happened with Spielman and Wannstedt. It happened with pretty much everybody with Nick, with Spielman and Saban and Mueller and Saban. It's happened since with Gase's situation, with Philbin's situation. It is always they choose one or the other. It's never a complete. The only total teardown was in 2005 when Nick came in. But even for that, they kept Spielman around because he was under contract. They didn't really click. 2008, they cleaned house and they let Parcells in between playing the ponies and and playing golf. He decided to bring his 2 cronies in here in Ireland and Sperano. And basically then, we know obviously what happened there, that Jeff and Tony didn't really see eye to eye at the end. And obviously it doesn't help when the general manager gets on a plane with the owner to hire his replacement. So that didn't go very well either. So this is just a consistent pattern of bungling, futility. And so now what you get today is this. The first wave is always, because this organization doesn't speak to the media, what this organization does is they leak, right? So now today the leaks are coming. So now Brian Flores is a bad guy. Now, how much of this is true and is not true? it's hard to really say. I mean, none of us, again, I'm not a Dolphin beat writer anymore, okay? But none of the media really got to know him very well. Part of that is the Patriots way, and part of that is COVID.
Zoom. It's everything on Zoom now.
Everything's on Zoom. You cannot, people are asking, the reporters to have background on this. You haven't been in a locker room in 2 years. I did all of my best. We've talked about this. I did all my best work pulling guys aside in the locker room when they would tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And developing relationships and getting phone numbers. I mean, the Dolphin players I talk to are the ones I cover. I've talked to 4 of them today, but they're from the they're from the Wannstedt years. I got to know those guys. I don't know these people. And the other reporters don't really know these people. They just know them from the Zoom calls. You get one question in. The Dolphins, unlike the Heat, I'm going to say unlike the Heat a lot today. Unlike the Heat, they don't even let us ask questions. 5 Reasons didn't get a question in with the Dolphins all year. They made the Zooms available to us. So, there's no relationships there. There's nothing. It's just everybody's shooting from the hip. So everybody's just kind of guessing today. So what happens? The Dolphins fill the void with people leaking stuff about Flores. He's tough to work with and all the rest of that. There are cases to be made that Brian Flores could have done a better job. Okay. 1-7 this season was in part his fault. Some of it was the way that he managed Tua. Some of it was the way he bungled the end of the game against Jacksonville. Some of it was not letting his defense play the way that they played last year. I am a Heat lifer, not because I'm supposed to root for them, but because I respect the way that they do things. Okay. It's just this night and freaking day. Okay.
Yep.
And it has been for 25 years. But the thing is, yeah, he made mistakes. There's no question about it. But what I don't understand is this. If you look at the track record of Chris Greer, and again, with the exception of the 3 first-round picks this year, which look good, and that is, you got to take that into account, he made a hell of a lot of mistakes. He obviously can't pick anybody on offensive line. I don't know who's the fault for the running back situation, but when taking 2 guys literally off the street, and they're both better than the 3 guys that you had here in-house, that's a scouting and development problem, okay? And then, additionally, the offensive line is a complete blind spot. And Lewis and I kind of called this last night, Louis Sung and I, on postgame, where I said, I think Ross is going to tell Flores, you need to change the way you approach coaches. You need to get rid of some guys, bring in some others. And apparently that's what he did. Now,
that's exactly what happened, apparently.
Right. Now, but see, the thing is, the way that looks to me is he asked the question knowing what the answer was going to be. So, if you already had it in your mind that you were going to fire Brian Flores at 1-7, okay? And then the team rips off a winning streak and makes it challenging for you to still make that decision. I do believe if Brian Flores made the playoffs, if he ran the table, he would have kept his job, okay? So, really, it came down to the Tennessee game. We can talk about the Jacksonville game and all, but all that was in the past. That got to 1-7, and then if they win the Tennessee game, which they weren't close, the quarterback was bad, and they ran Duke Johnson 7 times for some freaking reason in the rain, okay, instead of 21 times, which is what it should have been.
They actually did it right yesterday with Duke, but they needed that even more against Tennessee than they needed it yesterday.
They just gave that game away against Tennessee. I don't know that they would have won it, but, they gave themselves no chance.
Yeah.
I think the decision was made to fire him. I think that you build a case against someone. And it's the same thing when you're leaving a relationship. You're sort of building a case, and it's once you get to that point, it's there's really nothing the person can tell you at that stage because you've just got it in your head, and it starts to feel worse than it really was. And I kind of feel like this is where it's at now. And so then you ask the guy a question. You say, can you make changes to your coaching staff? And the guy is going to say no because of how he's loyal to certain people. He has a way he wants to do things, and that gives you your excuse. That's what this feels like to me. Now, could it be something other than that? Absolutely. But the reality is we're not really going to know everything because of the way that the Dolphins handle their business.
Right.
And that's not a Flores thing specifically. The Dolphins have been like this for years and years and years and years. And I just want to ask this one question to those, again, who say that I bring up the Heat too much, okay? Do we remember in the past 25 years, okay, and I know of certain situations, okay, but do we remember a controversy about people inside the Heat organization not being aligned since Stan Van Gundy went home to spend time with his family?
That's the one. But no, since then, nothing.
And that was 2005.
Yeah.
And that story, well, it was 2006 because I think it was early 2006. And that story was mangled by me and others, okay, who didn't know all of the inside. Some of it was personal. And you know, I kind of went after Pat on a lot of that stuff, which he remembered, by the way.
He never forgets, Pat.
No, he doesn't. And I defended Stan, as did others. I wasn't the only one, but we defended Stan, and then we kind of found out more about what really happened down the road. I still have a very good relationship with Stan, but we found out that it really wasn't exactly like this perception that Pat was looking to coach that team. I can tell you just one anecdote, and I'm not going to give the personal stuff, but one anecdote. This idea that Pat was itching to coach that team is Gary Payton walked into Pat's office after this happened and said, "So what are we running, coach?" And Riley was like, I haven't really been watching. It's not like he was plotting to okay.
He wasn't sitting in a basement like surrounded by film rooms. Like, I've got to coach these guys.
No, there was some personal stuff that was going on behind the scenes, and I think he was trying not to throw his head coach under the bus at that point, honestly. But I went the other direction with it. But because again, I got bad info. But the reality is, since then, you're talking 17 years, nothing. I mean, nothing. Okay. I mean, like they don't. There is one voice, you know, and the other thing that they do very well is when there are things that are brewing, they let certain reporters who they trust know kind of what's going on, not because they're necessarily trying to mold what they say, you know, and make them take their side, but at least they don't say the wrong thing. I mean, I had an hour conversation with a Heat executive this week out of the blue, called me, just go over some things he'd heard on my podcast. That's the kind of thing that they do. Again, I'm still going to have certain opinions, Alex. Like, I still may not agree with what they do on this and this, but at least they will tell you the reason. The Dolphins don't do that, okay? They don't do that, and they haven't done that for years.
I think most organizations don't. Like, I think the way that the Heat do it is very rare because I've been around enough of the local teams down here that I think what you're describing that the Heat do, I find that to be incredibly uncommon.
I think the Panthers have a very good handle now on relationships with the media. I think that they to differentiate between the Panthers and the Marlins a little bit, two organizations that need the support, one of which is being run really well right now, and one of which we still don't really know.
Well, and on that note, when you talk about needing the coverage, I'm surprised Inter Miami's not a little bit better with that.
They're bad.
Even people who work for them, they don't tell you what's going on.
No, they're bad. Like that's not me personally dealing with them. I'm just talking about people who are dealing with them. I'm just saying they will never make inroads in this market the way that they're operating. Right. They're just not. They need the coverage, and they don't go out of their way to get it. When you contrast that with the Panthers and what they're trying to do, I think that the Panthers have this right now. Like they are. It matters. It matters, particularly in this age, like you said, where you can't get to know the players. I got Sadato texting me, never a dull moment with the Dolphins. I mean, do you know how many years, Donno, how many years of this crap? Like, and I just feel like Dolphin fans, they don't even like the team anymore. It's just like again, it's a toxic relationship that they can't leave. Like it's like Udonis Haslam's IG story today.
I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't. That was great. Like you and UD, of course, South Florida lifer. He loves the Dolphins. He's pissed. Like, he is pissed today.
I mean, he's been pissed for them for 20 years ever since I've known UD. Like, it's not fun to be a Dolphins fan. When has it been fun? When has it been fun? The Miami Miracle, that game didn't effing count.
Didn't mean anything. I mean, it was a nice moment, but you didn't go to the playoffs.
Wildcat. The Wildcat.
I mean, at least I'm lucky enough. I'm not as old as you, as I'll remind everyone, but I am old enough to have watched enough Dan Marino, even not winning Super Bowls. That was fun. I haven't had that much fun since he retired.
I mean, in the last 4 years, I mean, I covered Dan's last 3. Like, they weren't fun either. I mean, New England linebackers pointing to where Dan was going to throw the ball. I mean, you're talking about the 80s. This is something to dream about. I want to root for another team so badly, but I can't. That's right. It's a toxic relationship. You can't leave. Like, Heat fans enjoy following the Heat. It's fun. Like, Panther fans right now, it's fun. Like, those they're being rewarded for what went on. Do we believe that Dolphins are ever going to be fun in our lifetimes?
I mean, that's an impossible question. I mean,
No, it's not. Didn't I come on here before the season and we talked about would they ever win a Super Bowl in our lifetimes? That's not even my bar anymore.
Yeah,
like,
probably
will they ever be fun again in our lifetimes? Tailgates are fun.
Yeah,
okay,
probably
drinking
not.
at games is fun. What's fun? They don't even have as many cheerleaders they used to have. They got like 6 on one side of the field. You can't even distract yourself. What is fun? What is fun about this experience? You know they're going to F it up again.
Yeah, I mean, fun is winning playoff games. I would say winning Super Bowls, but I'm not old enough to have experienced that down here. But at least like getting to and winning playoff games is fun.
I mean, yesterday I felt bad for Dolphin fans yesterday because it's like you're always given consolation prizes.
Yeah,
it's just like okay, we beat the Patriots, we made them feel bad. They're playing this week. I mean, New England they play this week. And they're not gonna
lose any sleep over losing yesterday.
No, and they're still going to the playoffs. Like it's just not fun. Like that Heat game against Phoenix on Saturday. That was fun.
It was so much fun. and I would have been talking a lot more about that today if not for Flo getting canned. So the Dolphins got to ruin that fun.
I appreciate the Dolphins doing this on a Heat off day. I mean, 2 Heat off days. So thank you very much to Steve for doing this. It's like I don't. It's not even worth banging on him anymore. Like he's obviously incredible at certain things in his life. I mean, he built a fortune. Stadium's gorgeous. He's not good at this. Like at a certain point, like you just decide. Like there are certain things, Alex. Like I'm not good at. Okay. Like I'll go through a list. Okay. I'm really good.
I don't know if we have enough time for that.
No, we don't. I'm good at sports content. I think.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. I can't cook. I don't clean. That's why I have somebody here today. My daughter has to clean stuff up around here. I literally cannot fix anything. Okay.
Me neither.
I'm terrible at relationships, which is why I'm single at almost 49 or divorced. Like, there are certain things that, like, I know I'm not good at. Okay. Like Steve Ross, you just realized this is not for you, bub. It's just not. Like, just build another stadium. Why don't we let Steve Ross build another stadium right next door for Inter? How about that? Okay. He'll build it for Inter. Nobody
build one for the Canes
to anybody.
too.
They won't win any games, right? Like just build a stadium. Like let's give him something to do. Can we give him something to do other than manage this football team? What do you think? Like octogenarian billionaires, like to do in their spare time? Like what do they like to do? I mean, they go to Trump rallies, obviously, but other than that, like what do they like to do?
If I were his age with billions, I would have disappeared off the grid years ago. Like honestly, like I'd worked so hard for like 70 some odd years before I hit 80. I would be on a fucking island sipping Mai Tais just off the face of the earth. I don't know why he's doing this. With
15 Latinas. Let's just go. That's it. Okay? Just take off. Let's get us a Biscayne Bay brew. Some buffalo strip from Quarterdeck, maybe some Manscaped, just to take care of that.
Play some bets at betus.com.
Betus.com, some CBD from Therapist Preferred. Like, let's get it. And he can play Prize Picks. You know what? He can play Prize Picks. He can use the code 5. Okay, he can bet the under on Tua in every game if he wants to. Could we give him something else to do? I don't want to. I just don't want to see his it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Like whatever it is he does. Like, okay, what are the options now? Doug Peterson? Doug Peterson will come. Every guy who comes who's won a championship somewhere else or whatever and comes down to the Dolphins, this is where they come to retire.
Yeah, that's true.
Nick Saban, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Parcells. They all come here to retire.
Yeah.
And yet if you hire a first-year guy, okay, you
have the same problem we've just had?
Okay. The Gase thing, I'm going to give him a pass, even though Gase was arrogant and all the rest of this stuff and totally incompetent. But I'm going to give him a pass for Gase because, there were 5 teams that wanted Adam Gase, at the time. And he had that Peyton Manning thing around him. How do you sit in a room? Seriously. I mean, this is why I can't trust this guy. How do you sit in a room with Joe Philbin? That guy, he's like from that painting of the farmers, the one I'm talking about,
yes.
I'll have to find. Okay.
The 2 farmers, one's holding the pitchfork and the other one. Yeah.
Except Philbin was using that pitchfork to pick up papers on the field. Okay.
Yeah,
how do you sit in a room with that guy? Say that's a leader of men. That's who I want to run my team of mid-20 something, mostly African American athletes. That's the guy I'm choosing. Like seriously, could you pick someone who was less equipped for that task?
And not to mention, because you raise a good point culturally, but Joe Philbin, and we knew this at the time, this was an offensive coordinator who didn't even call plays at Green Bay.
I know.
So
he
right there,
had no qualifications.
That should have been a huge. I mean, beyond the personality stuff, it should have been a huge red flag. This guy is the quote unquote OC, but he doesn't even have play calling duty.
He ate. Well, that may be true, Maddie, that they are the same person. You're right. Philbin and Ross have similar. And you know what? And I hate to say this because, again, terrible tragedy. Okay, and I'll remember what Philbin was going through at that time.
Yeah,
it made him a sympathetic figure. I wonder because it was like they kept pursuing him through all of that. But even so, like the guy had that on his mind. Like that, you why make that hire in that situation? Cycle back to it or something like that. But like, I just can't trust an owner who sat with Joe Philbin. I mean, literally, all Joe Philbin did was eat lunch with Aaron Rodgers. Like, right. And at the time, Rodgers didn't have to be vaccinated, so it was okay. But I'm just
on a roll today.
No, I'm just delirious with this whole thing because it's just so stupid. Like, I mean, seriously, I wanted to get my cavity fixed, and I'm sitting here like talking about it. Like, I know Manny wants the Doug Peterson.
Well, and honestly, and a bunch of people in the chat are asking who we want. I got to tell you,
I want
Peterson.
Mickey Harrison and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra.
No, that for sure. But like, at least like Doug Peterson, I was talking about this with Alfredo. He checks off a lot of boxes when it comes to the experience, the championship, and for those who care about this, I don't think it's as big of a factor as some think. But he also has ties with the organization, having played quarterback here. So you could do worse.
He's
than
close.
Peterson.
He's close to Marino.
Yeah.
I don't know how much Dan's voice. I mean, he'd be fine. I mean, I guess. Our guys at 3 yards per carry are reporting that Jim Caldwell is not in the mix here.
I saw that, which was interesting. I think that's a big scoop because I had assumed he was very much in the mix, so that's big.
Well, and he was in the mix the last time, so I don't know how that all played out with obviously with his illness and him leaving the team and taking some time and going. I actually think he would have been, I think that would have helped Flores. I think having a first-time head coach, having somebody who has done it before and won. I mean, look, Jim Caldwell won with the Lions. Like, that's really hard to do. That's like winning with the Dolphins. I mean, by the way, I think Flores is going to get a job somewhere else. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in this cycle. There's a lot of jobs. I think the Chicago job possibility. I think the Houston job would be a possibility.
Yeah.
I think
Houston, he might patch things up with Watson.
I know. Can you imagine?
Can you? I mean, wow.
Can you imagine the pressure that's going to be on Tua next year?
You know me, Ethan. I'm already.
I know you're iffy.
I'm expecting the worst. I'm a Tua truther. I'm not a hater.
Right.
I'm not Tua non. I'm just. I go by what I don't allow biases to affect the way that I look at Tua because a lot of people just they worship Tua because they were so excited when he was drafted. They sleep in Tua bed sheets. They bought Tua jerseys. They don't want to admit that this guy has limitations. Then you have other people that are just fucking miserable. We know people like this who just refuse to give any quarterback an opportunity. I'm somewhere in the middle, man. I think the guy has clear limitations. And yet, listen, if you build a juggernaut around him, you can win with Tua. Okay. I don't think he's the type to really elevate. But Ethan, we've had this conversation before. I think at this point, assuming Aaron Rodgers is not coming here and Russell Wilson's not coming here, and assuming that Deshaun Watson is still going to have a ton of baggage, I think another year with Tua on a rookie contract and actually giving him a better supporting cast, if you're capable of doing that, I think that's probably the right thing to do for another year. And that brings it full circle to what you were saying. The pressure is going to be tremendous. Yeah, I'm assuming Tua's back for another year, and it's going to be do or die for him next year.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and now the question is, do you bring in a guy who believes in him, or do you bring in a guy who's skeptical of him? I mean, certainly don't bring Chan Gailey back. I mean, whatever they're going to do, I hate to be a downer here, but whatever they're going to do, they're going to F it up. I mean, they're going to F it up. I mean, because that's what they do. And I don't, I mean, they were 9-8 this year, and I give them credit. I mean, look, that's a good defense. Like, it's a very good defense. Like, that defense can win now. But that was the case for the Dolphins in the early 2000s and the late 90s. They had a defense that could win now, and they couldn't pair it. The 80s, they had an offense that could have beaten anybody, and they had a defense that couldn't stop anybody. I mean, it's just it is hard. It is really hard, okay, unless you're completely inept, all right?
Yeah.
To not win a playoff game for 21 years. I mean, the NFL has added playoff teams, okay? They have made it easier. It was when this first started, there were 5 teams in each conference. Now there's 7 that make it. They've literally opened the door to more teams. Like, you cannot, I mean, think about this, okay? How many teams win playoff games in a given year, right? I mean, it's like, well, this year it would be at least
At least 6, or no, at least 7. At least 7. 7, because
right.
14 total, so 7 of those have to win.
Okay, so you're
Or
talking
no,
about...
but then you throw the whole first round bye thing. Jesus, now I'm confused. 6
Well,
or 7,
it does get a little
like
more
that.
confusing, right? But at least there's okay. But in the first week, there's 6 teams playing against 6 teams, so you're gonna get 6 winners, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's minimum. Then if the bye teams win games, then they're gonna win a game too,
7.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got 6 teams that are gonna win games in the playoffs. All right, so extrapolate that over 21 years. It's 126 different. I mean, there's only 30 teams in the league. Like
32, but yeah.
Okay, whatever. Well, yeah, I don't count the Dolphins and the Lions. Sorry. I mean 30. I mean, literally, this is where the Bengals are in the playoffs.
Yeah, they won their division.
The Bengals, and for years, Marvin Lewis was the Chris Greer of coaches.
Yep.
Like literally the guy you could not fire. Like what does Chris Greer have on Steve Ross? What do we think?
He is a survivor. I was talking about this with Alfredo. He's been with the organization, I think, since 2004.
Yeah.
Not only has he steadily climbed up the ladder, but how many purges has does he hide in the file cabinet when people are getting fired and oh wait, you're still here? Okay.
I don't. I look. Give him credit for the draft picks this year. It looks like he nailed all 3 of them. Okay.
Yeah. Last year though.
Right. Well, I mean, there are 2 that are just no. I mean, I don't care if Austin Jackson becomes a legitimate serviceable guard in the NFL. It's still a busted pick. I mean, that's
bad pick.
And Noah now, of course, now
he can't play.
To
Noah.
some of these leaks, he can't play, right? So now we're starting to get some of these leaks that was actually Flores' choice. And this is again what always happens at the end. I told this story on the stream today, and I always tell this story because this is what always happens at the end. Always, okay. Is that I remember being called up to Rick when all this stuff was going on, when it was clear that Dave was on the way out. Okay, 2004, they had switched roles where Rick Spielman took over from Wannstedt, even though nobody told Rick. And I mean, you want to talk about press conferences? That might have been the craziest one. I could do this all day, but the craziest one was when they flew in Dave Wannstedt from Naples because Jimmy didn't want to coach anymore, so it was the only way that they could keep Jimmy coaching. That was a great one. But the other one was 2004, where they made the swap of Spielman and Wannstedt in terms of who had final say, but then they put Marino above both of them, but Marino just wanted to fucking get home to Claire, and he really didn't know what the fuck he was supposed to be fucking doing there. And then he was sitting on a cold fucking bench in Mobile, and he asked Rick Spielman, he's like, well, when the fuck does the limo get here? And they said, no, we're on a football operations budget, Dan. We all hop in a cab. And then he quit 3 days later. Yeah. But literally, the Spielman Wannstedt thing was, Rick called me into his office when I was a beat guy, because again, you're trying to separate from the guy, the other guy, right? So he calls me in, and it was legitimate. He showed me their scouting report on Anquan Boldin, okay? And the way that the Dolphins used to rank players was under Rick. He had a system, and by the way, he's done pretty well in Minnesota since he's left, as Ireland has in New Orleans, which I'm loath to admit. Okay,
yeah, the executives do well after they leave here. The coaches don't.
Coaches don't. So Spielman shows it to me, and it says in there, next to Bolden, he had 1.19. And the one was just, don't worry about the one, but the 0.19 was late first round pick. 1.9, late first round pick. Next, he's like, look at Eddie Moore. I had him as a 1.31, but Dave made us take Eddie Moore. This is what always happens at the end, okay? Is that, and you're hearing it today. And there are certain media members, and some of them are friends of both you and I, who've been banging on Brian Flores here for the last 2-3 months, mutual friend of you and I, and I knew as soon as I saw that there was trouble in paradise, okay? Yeah. Right? Because I had a feeling where that was coming from. This is what happens. This is what happens, okay? Every man for themselves. So,
and also history is written by the victors.
Absolutely. There are no victors here, though. That's the problem.
Well, true. But there are people who keep their jobs and others who don't. And
so when 5 are live, so let's just do this now. I guess I forgot to keep calling it 5 are live. But when the 5 Reasons YouTube channel disbands in 3 years, I'm going to show you people, okay, all of you, that Donno sabotaged the Bet US codes. It's his fault. It wasn't my fault. He took your money. If you've been with me using my code, you would have Tyler Hero at 20-1 for 6th man of the year right now, like I do.
Instead, they're losing bets with me
That's right.
because I'm the mush.
That's right. You're the mush, not me. All right?
Oh, man.
That's all right. Brady will be running the network by then anyway. It's fine.
In like 3 years.
Yeah,
But
maybe 3 months at this rate, actually.
Ethan, awesome stuff as always. I can't tell you how much I thank your time, and I love your perspective. I thought you brought this whole chaos. You brought it to a really interesting place, and so let people know. Of course, you're behind the entire network, and there's probably more things you can even plug. But let people know about your show on 5R Live, and if there's any other big broadcasts this week you want to make sure to plug. Floor is yours.
Well, Floor is Yours actually is a program that we have on the YouTube channel every Thursday at 8 o'clock covering the Miami Heat. No, 5 on the Floor podcast is one up right now about why the Heat have been playing so well against good teams. We're actually doing a PJ Tucker appreciation episode tonight, so we're positive on that podcast right now. Anyway, the Heat are playing well.
Yeah.
And then starting 9 tomorrow morning, I guess we'll get back into this tomorrow. I'll bring one of our Dolphins guys on there, chop it up. I'm on starting 9 every Tuesday and Wednesday on the YouTube channel when I decide not to sleep in. So
and my compliments this morning. I was watching you and Lewis and the entire crew, even that Jets fan. I was watching.
Yeah, Nick Alvarez showed up. I've never actually seen him before. We added him to our.
And neither have I. Yeah.
No, so I didn't know at first. It took me a second. I was like, "Wait, who is this?" Because he didn't put his name on, and he just introduced himself as a Jets fan. Like you said, I don't know most of the people in my network, so. But I thought he had an interesting perspective. Well, we welcome all kinds. I had a Ken O'Brien jersey when I was little, so it's okay. It's all right.
Ooh. Well, good stuff as always, Ethan. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great show tomorrow.
All right, thank you, sir. It was him with the codes. Bye.
I love it. And by the way, make sure you sign up at betus.com with our code 5RSN125, and they're going to hook you up with a 125% sign up bonus. Whether you're betting on the national championship game tonight, you bet Miami Heat games, NFL playoff games. There's no time like the present to sign up at betus.com and start playing, start winning, and start getting paid. betus.com. It is available in Florida. Make sure you use our code 5RSN125. Ken, I'm sorry to say I've got to wrap it up because I'm supposed to pick my child up from daycare in about 15 minutes. Luckily, the daycare is only about 10 minutes away. Or no, not even that. It's like 5 minutes away, but I got to pick him up in 15 minutes. So unfortunately, I do have to wrap this up in a moment. And I implore you guys, we've been on for an hour and 22 minutes now on this broadcast. For those who have been with us for the duration, thank you so much. For those who may have tuned in late, go back and watch the replay of the episode because we were shot out of a cannon when we started the show today. And yes, smash the like button. Please, that really helps us out. Smash the like button and subscribe to 5 Reasons Sports on YouTube. If you enjoy this content and you want other eyes to see it, which is going to help us grow and thrive, you want to smash the like button because it not only shows your appreciation, which we appreciate your appreciation, but the way the YouTube algorithm works, the more likes we get, the more people's YouTube homepages and suggested videos this is going to turn up in. So the more likes we get, the more people are inevitably going to see this and all the other great shows at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. So please, guys, do us a favor and smash the like button and subscribe. And if you're able to support our sponsors, if you're a South Floridian or a frequent South Florida visitor, support the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. If you're an avid sports bettor or interested in getting into it, support betus.com. And if you're a fantasy player, I mean, who isn't these days? You want to support prizepicks.com. We have codes on all of those. Oh, Lewis, hi from Scotland. Now, Lewis, I'm putting the pieces together. You're Andy's son, right? Thank you so much. You and your pops. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you guys. Lewis Cornell from Scotland. Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I hear you're quite the football player, man. So hopefully we'll see you on my Miami Hurricanes and on my Miami Dolphins some days. I got it. Full disclosure. I do shout outs at the end of these episodes. Today we were so jammed with people in the live chat. I guarantee you I'm going to miss some people in the shout outs today. I really apologize for that. I'm going to try to shout out as many viewers as I can. See, Nick Hernandez just gets in. I love when people within the chat argue with each other. I'm here to watch the world burn. I love what people are. To me, it shows passion. I'm okay. Sometimes arguments within fan bases get a little bit toxic, but there's nothing wrong with a little healthy debate. Thank you, Revo13, for tuning in. My guy, John Marco, thank you so much for tuning in. Kind of like to Mrs. Open Receivers. I love it. Ryan Nunez, thank you so much for tuning in. IMAX, thank you so much. He's one of our chronics. Dylan Tran, thank you so much for tuning in. Ken Helm, I saw was very active. G.A. Kane fan, another one of our chronics. I said, I've got to leave in a few minutes to pick up my son. He says, your son can walk home. He's 3 years old, sir. He hasn't even turned 4. He cannot walk home. Maybe if he was like 12, maybe he could walk home. I don't know. I don't even know. I've only got the one kid, so I only know my own experiences. I know very little about raising a human being. I only know what I've learned in almost 4 years of raising my son. If you live like 5 minutes by car away from your kid's school or daycare, how old does your kid have to be before they're able to walk home? Because I don't feel like people do that a whole. I mean, the world is just more of a dangerous place, right? I mean, when like my parents, they always told me, oh, when we were growing up, everybody walked to school. There was no crime. The entire world was this great utopia. Nothing bad ever happened. Nowadays, I don't feel like people do that anymore. I don't know what the cutoff age is. David, thank you so much. Another one of our chronics. Thank you for tuning in. Alex M, he says, do we still have Jacoby Brissett on the team? You have to get rid of him, because when people talk about the Dolphins quarterback situation, they get very focused on the starting quarterback. You definitely need, no matter who the starting quarterback is next year, you need to improve the backup quarterback situation, because Alex M is not it. By the way, I get a note from our chronic Marla who says, do not allow Luka to walk home until he's a teenager. I won't. There's no way at 4 or 3, he's still 3 for about another month. There's no way I'm letting him walk home. Maybe in like another 10, 12 years, he can walk home. Not yet. Marcus Hunter, thank you so much for tuning in today. Lance McDonald, thank you so much. Matty Blue 80, thank you so much. Take DeCanoli, one of my favorite usernames, is another chronic. I see him in here frequently. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to do a few more of these, and then I got to go. I'm going to try it. Tony 2 times. This is my guy. He's saying this is what Greer has to keep his job. Pictures of Ross with Kraft at the Orchid Spa. Edgy, very edgy message, sir. Dean G, thank you so much for tuning in. Jim Malone, thank you so much. Let's see. I want to get a few more. Astraf Sterling, thank you so much. Is that your real name? It's interesting if it is. I think that's kind of cool. I've never seen that name before. That might just be your nickname. Let's see. Who else? Andrew Harris, Jay Mill, thank you so much for tuning in. Frank Underwood, House of Cards fame. By the way, I know that I know Kevin Spacey really fucked up. Like I understand why they took him off that show, but they did a final season of House of Cards after Kevin Spacey left the show. What a waste of time. Manny, put yourself in here. I know you were a big House of Cards fan as well. They should not have even done another season without Kevin Spacey. That show was terrible. It was a waste of time, the final season.
They were trying too many different plots and things. It just never really was the same at all. And then, he died. But then they didn't really carry the story. It was, everybody moved on and his wife became the president, which is great. But, waste of time.
I completely agree. And I knew Manny was a House of Cards fan as well till that final season. Thank you to Nick. Thank you to Bromar Smelly. Thank you to Coco Crisp John. Thank you so much. Who else? I try not to shout out the same people. There's going to be some repeats sometimes. Andy Barrero, thank you so much. Trade for Sean Payton or Mike Tomlin. Like you can trade for coaches. It's happened before. It's not an unprecedented thing. I don't necessarily think either of them would want to come here, though. It's the thing. My guy, Money Mike Dixon. Thank you so much for participating in the chat today. The Stupid Seal, Ali Sabai, thank you so much. The Fin Addict Fury with Larry K, thank you so much for tuning in. George, thank you so much. I'm going to do a couple more than I got to run, guys. Taco About Sports. By the way, tomorrow's Taco Tuesday. He says he needs that Manscaped. TMI, my friend, but we'll talk all about it on Taco Tuesday tomorrow on Donno Daily. Finn's Tailgate, thank you so much. And I know I saw my guy Big Dan 305 in here earlier. Even if I don't pull up a message from him, I do want to shout him out as well. I am Danny. Clever Clever the way that's spelled. I like that. Let me do one more. Hold on. Wow, this is a long word. Single light tarot mask match groups. What the hell is that? But thank you for tuning in. It's a crazy ass username. All right, guys. If I missed you, I apologize. We will talk to everybody again tomorrow. Same time, same channel, 3 p.m. right here. Donno Daily. Oh, wait, hold on. Did we get a new super chat? Oh, Griffin Gaming. Thank you so much. Hold on. I want to make sure. And we did get some super chats today. So huge thank you to everyone who was able to donate. We really appreciate the super chat. Griffin Gaming says, Ross needs to sell the team. This firing was dumb. Let's Greer get away with murder, but dumps coaches like high school girlfriend. Honestly, we spent a lot of time on this today. Of course, I can justify the Flo firing, but I really would have preferred if they cleaned house. I don't like the way that with Stephen Ross, it's always half measures, not full measures. He's always firing a coach but keeping the GM, or firing a GM and keeping the coach. At some point, if we can agree that something is wrong and the team is not going in the right direction, you need to hold everybody accountable, not just one person accountable. All right, we will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Another episode of Donno Daily on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Ciao.